If you're trying to decide between Tysons and McLean, you're probably thinking, they're basically the same area. How different could it really be? And I'll tell you right now, that assumption is where people get this decision wrong. Because on a map, they look interchangeable. But in reality, they represent two completely different ways of living. And I've seen people choose the right one and it fits like a glove. And I've seen people choose wrong and slowly realize over months that something just feels off. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through this the way that I do with my own clients. Not just features, not just stats, but how these places actually feel to live in day-to-day, year-to-year. I started my real estate career in downtown McLean at a boutique brokerage. And then I went on to manage our RE/MAX office in McLean for about 7 to 8 years. So this wasn't just a market that I dropped into occasionally. This was my daily environment. I was doing rentals in Tysons, helping buyers into McLean, watching people wrestle with this exact decision. And what makes this unique is I've seen Tysons before the transformation, and I've watched it evolve into what it is today, which gives me a perspective that a lot of newer agents just don't have. Tysons today is trying to become something very specific, a true urban downtown for Northern Virginia. And the key word there is trying, because it is still a work in progress. But that progress is real. Take the Boro, for example. That area has become one of the most walkable, lifestyle-driven pockets in Tysons. Restaurants, coffee, outdoor space. It actually feels like a place you could spend time and not just pass through. Or communities like the Rotunda, which have been around longer, but still attract buyers who want that proximity to Tysons with a slightly more established, self-contained, resort-like feel. And then you've got all the newer high-rise condo developments going up throughout Tysons. Modern buildings, amenities, views, and concierge living. Deborah and I see that shift ourselves. When Cirque du Soleil comes into Tysons and sets up that big tent, it's not random. It is because Tysons has become a destination. And the Capital One Center area really drives that home. That's where Tysons starts to feel like a city. People walking around, outdoor dining, energy that did not exist 10 to 15 years ago. This is not suburban housing. This is urban style living placed into Northern Virginia. Let me give you a story that really captures this transformation. I had clients who owned a condo right on the edge of McLean and Tysons. When they bought it, the area felt like it was still figuring itself out. And then they stayed, and everything around them changed. They watched the metro being built, literally outside their door. The Silver Line going in, stations rising, access improving. At the same time, they watched the Capital One campus rise from the ground. Cranes, steel, glass, every day. And slowly, their daily life changed. More convenience, more access, more reasons to stay local. Wegmans. And then their condo value changed too. Not because they renovated it, but because Tysons became more desirable. And when we sold it, they were in a very strong position. And what did they do? They moved to Florida, bought new construction on a golf course near the beach, and kept their Northern Virginia jobs because now they were able to work remotely. And that is one of the most important lessons here. You're not just buying a home. You're positioning yourself for what your life might look like in 5 to 10 years down the road. Let's talk numbers, because this is where decisions get real. In Tysons, most of what you're looking at is condos and some townhomes. And generally speaking, you could get into Tysons in the $500,000 to $800,000 range for many condos. Newer luxury buildings can push into the $900,000 to $1.3 million plus, depending on size, view, and buildings. Penthouses and premium units can go well beyond that. And what are you paying for in Tysons? You're paying for proximity, convenience, amenities, and future growth, because Tysons is still evolving, and that matters. Some buyers will look at Tysons and say, this feels expensive for a condo. Others look at it and say, I'm getting access to something that's still being built. Both are valid, but they come from different mindsets. Now, let's talk honestly about commuting. Tysons gives you something that McLean does not really, the metro. The Silver Line runs right through it. That's a big deal, especially for people commuting into DC. But here's the reality that people don't always hear. Tysons traffic can be intense. Not a little busy, intense. Because you have office traffic, retail traffic, residential growth, all converging. So Tysons gives you options: metro, proximity, and walkability in pockets. But it also comes with density. Now, let's talk about McLean, because McLean is not trying to become something new. McLean is already established. And you see that in the neighborhoods like Ballantrae Farms, Langley, The Reserve, Salona Village, Chesterbrook. These are not transitional areas. These are legacy neighborhoods, and that matters. Because when people buy in McLean, they're not betting on change. They're buying into stability. Let's talk about something that people don't always think about up front, but ends up being part of your life every single week if you're living in Tysons or McLean. Shopping, restaurants, just being out. Because this is where Tysons and McLean really separate. If you're in Tysons, you are at the center of one of the biggest retail and dining hubs in the entire region. You've got Tysons Corner Center, which is massive. Everything from everyday stores to higher end brands, plus the restaurants, movie theater, and constant activity. And then right across the street, you've got Tysons Galleria, and that's a completely different feel. That's luxury retail, high-end brands, quieter environment, more curated experience. And then layered into all of that, you've got places like the Boro, with the restaurants, coffee, and walkable dining, spots like North Italia, Flower Child, Circa, quick access to everything from casual to upscale dining within minutes. So in Tysons, your lifestyle can become very immediate. You don't have to plan as much. You just go. Dinner, 5-minute decision. Errands, all in one trip. Meeting someone, easy. Now let's contrast that with downtown McLean. Completely different feel. You've got areas along Chainbridge Road and around the central McLean Strip. Places like Cafe OG, J. Gilbert's, McLean Family Restaurant, Greenberry's Coffee. These are not destination mega centers. These are local spots, places where people know each other, places that feel consistent. McLean isn't trying to compete with Tysons on scale. It's offering something else: familiarity, ease, a quieter rhythm. You're not walking into a massive mall with hundreds of stores. You're going to a handful of places you know, trust, and come back to again and again. And this is one of those subtle but very real differences. Tysons gives you options. McLean gives you consistency. And depending on your personality, one of those is going to feel right and the other is going to feel a little bit off. And this ties directly into the bigger question that we've been talking about this entire time. Not just where you live, but how you live once you're there. Let's talk numbers again. McLean is one of the most expensive markets in Northern Virginia. Entry-level single-family homes often start around $1.1 to $1.4 million. Move-up homes in the $1.5 to $2.5 million range, and luxury and estate homes from $3 million to $10 million plus. And in neighborhoods like Langley Farms, you're in a completely different category. Now here's the key. You're not just paying for the house. You're paying for the land. school districts, the reputation, and long-term value preservation. McLean doesn't spike as dramatically as Tysons, but it holds its value. And that's why it attracts a certain type of buyer. Let me give you a story that captures McLean almost perfectly. I was showing a home in one of those estate-style neighborhoods. It might have been the Reserve. Long driveway, set back from the road, trees everywhere. We walked through the house, everything you would expect. Beautiful in the finishes, the kitchen. Then we go downstairs, and suddenly we are in this full recreation space, bar, entertainment area, and walls covered in football photos and jerseys. It wasn't staged, it was personal. And we all kind of paused, and then it clicked. We were in the home of one of the then Washington Redskins coaches. And that moment really captured McLean, because behind the privacy, behind the trees, there are people with serious careers and influence. And they're not trying to show it off. They're choosing to live quietly in McLean. Schools play a major role here. McLean is anchored by strong public schools like Langley High School and McLean High School. And then you have the elite private options, the Potomac School, the Madera School, and Flint Hill School. For many families, this alone drives the decision towards McLean. Here's the simplest way to think about it. Tysons equals opportunity, energy, and growth. McLean, stability, space, and prestige. Tysons is where things are going. McLean is where things have already been established. And your decision comes down to, who are you right now, and who do you want to be in the next 5 to 10 years? If you're trying to figure out where you fit, Tysons or McLean, I put together a curated breakdown based on your budget, commute, preferences, and lifestyle. Reach out and I will send it to you, because this decision, it is not just about real estate. It is about how you want to live.